You know that feeling when you set your alarm for like 5:30 a.m., fully intending to do this rigorous morning yoga sequence and a solid hour of meditation before work?
Oh, absolutely. The classic ambitious evening plan.
Right. You've got the pristine yoga mat rolled up in the corner. You've downloaded the perfect, highly rated wellness app.
Yep.
But then, the sun comes up and reality just hits you.
Right.
Exactly. The alarm goes off, your inbox is already overflowing with urgent requests, the kids are awake and demanding breakfast, and that grand, serene plan just completely collapses before your feet even touch the floor.
And then, like clockwork, the guilt sets in.
Yes, that crushing, heavy guilt.
That you simply do not have enough hours in the day to do wellness, quote unquote, perfectly.
It's so universal.
It is, and it's a devastating irony, really. I mean, the very practices that were designed centuries ago to alleviate the pressure of human existence, they end up feeling like just another set of KPIs that you are failing to meet.
Like a performance review for your soul.
Exactly. It transforms wellness from a refuge into this source of profound stress.
Which is the exact tension we're unpacking today in this deep dive. Because anyone trying to better themselves today feels this. We have this deep, almost desperate desire to integrate these profound ancient practices into our hectic lives, but it just constantly collides with the sheer chaos of our modern schedules.
It's a clash of two different worlds, really.
Totally. And there is a fascinating perspective on this from a teacher named Osman, who's known as the blind Muslim yogi. His approach is essentially this highly pragmatic, entirely guilt-free philosophy of yoga that serves as a bridge between ancient traditions and 21st century chaos.
And what makes Osman's perspective so incredibly valuable for you, the listener, is the stark duality of his life experience. He's not lecturing from an isolated, tranquil monastery somewhere.
Far from it, right. His background is almost a contradiction in terms, but in the best way possible.
Yeah. On one hand, he is a master-level energy healer. He's been practicing, studying, and living yoga and meditation for almost 5 decades.
Wow, 50 years.
But on the other hand, he has also been a highly active, boots-on-the-ground entrepreneur for 29 years.
Which is such a rare combination, and it means he provides this desperately needed reality check for the ambitious, busy professional.
He's living, breathing proof that you don't have to abandon your worldly ambitions or quit your job or, move to a mountaintop ashram to extract the genuine benefits of these ancient sciences.
Right, the physiological and psychological benefits.
Exactly. He builds a really compelling case that wellness must be a tool that serves your life, rather than becoming this second full-time job that you constantly feel you are failing at.
Okay, let's actually look at the math on that second full-time job concept, because the clash between ancient protocols and modern reality, it's just a sheer mathematical impossibility.
It really is.
When you look at the classical Vedic yoga protocols that Osman references, the amount of time required isn't just large, it is utterly staggering.
Right.
Like, if you were to follow the absolute letter of the ancient laws, your day begins before the world even wakes up.
Right. To do the full ambit of the practice traditionally, Osman notes you would need to go to bed extremely early so you can wake up at 3 a.m.
3:01 a.m., just let that sink in.
And then your primary practice block would run from 3:00 a.m. to 7 a.m.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that is 4 uninterrupted hours of rigorous physical and energetic work before you even officially start your workday.
And what blows my mind is what actually happens in those 4 hours. It's not just sitting quietly on a cushion.
Not at all.
Before you even get to the core energy or breath work, the pranayama, you are supposed to do a massive physical warm-up. He mentions ideally doing 12 sets of Surya Namaskar, the sun salutations.
And we should probably pause and look at the underlying mechanism of why that takes so long. Because Surya Namaskar isn't just like a basic hamstring stretch.
Right. It's not just touching your toes.
Biologically, it is a systematic activation of the entire nervous system. You are linking 12 specific postures with deep, rhythmic breathing to physically pump lymphatic fluid, lubricate the fascia,
and forcefully shift your body out of a parasympathetic sleep state into a sympathetic state of high readiness.
Exactly. And doing 12 complete sets of that, it requires serious, sustained cardiovascular output and time.
And that makes the next step even more intense, because after that physical marathon, you move into Kapalbhati breathing.
Right.
And just to put a biological lens on that, Kapalbhati translates roughly to skull-shining breath. It involves these highly active, forceful exhalations followed by passive inhalations.
You're essentially using your diaphragm as a rapid-fire pump.
Yeah, exactly, to flush residual carbon dioxide out the lower lobes of your lungs and hyperoxygenate the bloodstream. It literally wakes up the brain. But again, doing this properly takes time.
And that is still just the warm-up.
Right, that's just the warm-up.
Only then, according to the Yoga Sutras, do you move into a minimum of 21 rounds of alternate nostril breathing with breath retention.
21 rounds.
And the retention aspect is crucial here. Holding the breath builds carbon dioxide tolerance in the blood, which strengthens vagal tone and helps regulate your fight-or-flight response.
Right, and the alternate nostril aspect is designed to balance the left and right hemispheres of the brain, I think.
Exactly. But 21 rounds of this, done slowly and deliberately with long retentions, it's an immense time commitment.
And here's the real kicker. Those 21 rounds aren't just a once-a-day morning routine.
No, they are not.
The classical texts suggest performing that specific breathwork protocol at 4 different junctions of the day.
4?
So you have your 4 hours in the morning, then you need to do these breathwork sessions at noon, in the late afternoon, and in the evening, plus an hour or 2 of practice at night, plus incantations or mantras during your meals or while traveling.
It's wild. When you aggregate all of those classical requirements, you are looking at a minimum of 8 hours of dedicated practice every single day.
Which is literally the length of a standard corporate workday. Comparing that to a modern schedule, it's like having a second full-time job where your boss is an ancient, unforgiving yogic text.
Well, to understand why this disparity exists, we really have to look at the socioeconomic reality of the eras in which these sciences were developed.
That's a great point.
These ancient protocols, they were engineered for ascetics, monks, or individuals whose entire societal function was spiritual pursuit.
Right. They were deeply embedded in communities that financially and agriculturally supported them.
Exactly. The village provided the food and shelter, so the monk could do the 8 hours of breath work on behalf of the community's spiritual health.
So the monk wasn't exactly checking urgent Slack messages from a client at 8 p.m.
No.
or trying to figure out how to pay a rising mortgage.
Precisely. In the 21st century, if you are gainfully employed, if you are paying for your own shelter, your own groceries, your own clothing,
And you're navigating a highly volatile, competitive market where you constantly have to strategize just to stay afloat.
right, dedicating 8+ hours a day to a wellness practice is a biological and economic impossibility.
Osman points this out with such relatable humor. He says that as an entrepreneur, 24 hours in a day is simply not enough. He jokes that even if a day had 48 hours and the sun took twice as long to set, an entrepreneur's workload would simply expand to fill that new space.
And that realization, honestly, it should be a massive relief for anyone listening.
Totally.
If you are struggling to find even 1 hour for daily yoga or meditation, it is not a personal failure, it is not a lack of discipline, and it certainly isn't some deep spiritual shortcoming.
Right. It's a symptom of living in a completely different century. You're operating in an economic reality that these ancient texts could not have anticipated.
And we're not designed for.
Which brings up a really difficult reality. If we accept that the 8-hour ideal is mathematically impossible for most of us, how do we actually survive those intensely busy periods without just throwing our hands up and abandoning the practice entirely?
Well, the primary trap people fall into here is binary thinking.
Okay, the all-or-nothing mindset.
Exactly. The mindset of, if I can't do the full 2-hour morning sequence I planned, I won't do anything at all today. Osman completely rejects that approach through a concept he calls the sub-minimum.
Now, I want to push back on this idea of the sub-minimum a little bit, though, because I can already hear the wellness purists arguing against it.
Okay.
If we aggressively cut corners on these ancient, highly specific practices, don't we lose the benefits entirely? Like, from a physiological standpoint, how low can you actually drop your practice time before it stops being an effective intervention and just becomes a placebo?
That is the pivotal question, and it comes down to understanding the minimum effective dose.
Okay.
Let's look at Osman's specific numbers, because his transparency here is incredibly rare for a teacher with his level of mastery.
Yeah, he's very open about it.
Take his energy work, the breath work that controls the subtle life force, awakening it and letting it permeate the nervous system. Ideally, he states he needs to spend 3 hours a day on this specific energy work.
3 hours just on energy work.
Yes. But when he reflects on his actual daily life, he admits he cannot even recall a handful of days where he organically hit that 3-hour mark.
Wow.
Usually he manages about 2 hours a day, achieving that roughly 80 to 90% of the time. But the crucial part is the remaining 10 to 20%.
When life gets crazy.
Exactly. When he is facing massive business emergencies, when there are complex tasks requiring his immediate, long-term focused attention, he drops down to his absolute subminimum.
And for a master whose ideal is 3 hours, what does that subminimum look like?
30 minutes.
Wait, really?
Yeah, he slashes it from 3 hours down to 30 minutes a day.
That is an enormous reduction. Dropping from 180 minutes to 30 minutes seems like you lose all the benefits.
Well, you lose the deep compounding progression, yes? But you do not lose the baseline regulation, which is the whole point of the minimum effective dose.
Okay, how does that work?
To use an analogy, think of the full 3-hour practice as plugging your phone into the wall overnight. It does a deep, slow charge, recalibrates the battery, and optimizes the system for the next day.
Right.
The 30-minute sub-minimum is like plugging your phone into a fast charger at an airport terminal for a few minutes while running to your gate.
Oh, I like that.
It's not going to upgrade your battery's overall capacity, and it won't last you a week, but it absolutely prevents the phone from dying on you today.
That makes total sense. So the 30 minutes of breath work isn't meant to achieve profound spiritual enlightenment that day.
No.
It's meant to metabolize the immediate cortisol spike from his business emergency so his nervous system doesn't redline. It keeps the battery alive.
Exactly. And he applies this ruthless reduction across all his practices.
For yoga, too.
Yes. For his physical yoga postures, his ideal sequence takes just over an hour. But when time is scarce, he dials that sequence down to just 20 minutes.
And meditation.
For meditation, the classical requirement for a healer of his level is a minimum of 3 hours a day. He explicitly states he struggles to even reach 1 single hour a day. He often has to perform his meditation in small pockets of time throughout the workday just to scrape together that hour.
So the secret to a lifelong, consistent practice isn't rigid perfection, it's elasticity.
Elasticity is the perfect framing. The sub-minimum is a vital survival tool. It keeps the habit alive and the nervous system baseline stable during chaotic weeks.
Yeah.
By having a pre-approved, guilt-free sub-minimum, knowing that 20 minutes of stretching still counts, you maintain your biological connection to the practice without disrupting your very real responsibilities to your family or your career.
But operating on that kind of extreme elasticity requires a massive amount of filtering. Like, if you only have that 20-minute fast charge at the airport, you have to be absolutely ruthless about what you prioritize in that window and what you choose to ignore.
Oh, absolutely. When time becomes your most scarce resource, you are forced to ask, what is the actual core of this practice and what is just academic decoration?
And Osman handles this filtering process beautifully. It reminds me of the reality of driving a car.
How so?
Well, to safely drive a car to the grocery store, you need to understand the steering wheel, the brake pedal, and the accelerator. You need to know the basic rules of the road, but you absolutely do not need to memorize the engineering schematic of a combustion engine.
Right.
And you certainly don't need to read that engineering manual in its original complex language.
That analogy perfectly captures his philosophy toward the highly academic side of classical yoga.
He actively chooses to throw out the engineering manual. Yeah. He states openly that he does not bother going into the complicated Sanskrit terminologies or the ancient South Indian terms.
Yeah.
He doesn't obsess over the highly detailed academic nuances of specific bandhas or mudras. I mean, he studied them decades ago, but he intentionally let them fade from his memory banks because they simply do not serve his immediate daily reality.
And we should clarify what those terms mean mechanically to understand why he drops them.
Yeah, let's break that down.
Bandhas are essentially body locks, intentional muscle contractions, meant to isolate and direct the flow of subtle energy within the body. And mudras are highly specific hand gestures designed to seal or guide that energy.
Okay.
So, using your car analogy, these are the advanced aerodynamic tweaks and specialized fuel mixtures a professional race car driver might use to shave a fraction of a second off a lap time.
But if you just need to drive to the grocery store without crashing, worrying about the aerodynamics of your hand gestures is a complete waste of your 20-minute window.
Precisely. Osman is making a highly conscious choice to prioritize immediate outcomes over academic mastery. He is prioritizing practical energy management, getting the car safely down the road, over being a walking encyclopedia of ancient yogic science.
He even says something that sounds almost scandalous for a yoga master. He says, I'm not someone you could come to get a comprehensive knowledge on yoga.
It sounds scandalous, but it is deeply intentional. He filters every single technique he has ever learned through one very pragmatic lens. How can I apply this to my everyday life to tangibly improve my experience of it right now?
Right. He's not practicing for abstract, multi-lifetime enlightenment.
No, he is looking for concrete results that he can feel within a tight window, specifically a 6-week to 6-month period.
He is focused entirely on the short-term return on investment, and the specific outcomes he is measuring are universally relatable for anyone trying to survive modern life.
Oh, you really are.
He measures his practice by asking, is this improving my creativity? Am I achieving a deeper state of calm? Am I making better decisions under pressure? And physically, am I increasing my daily feeling of energeticness and maintaining my flexibility?
Those are the metrics that actually matter in the 21st century. Can you approach a supply chain crisis with a regulated nervous system? Can you access your creative problem solving when you need to pivot a business strategy? This pragmatic, almost clinical approach to the benefits of the practice brings us to a really vital influence of his.
Dr. Deepak Chopra.
Yes.
He brings up Chopra as an absolute icon that he deeply reveres. But, in a world full of spiritual teachers, why is the specific connection to Deepak Chopra so critical to Osman's philosophy?
It comes down to translation. Dr. Chopra is famous for taking these highly esoteric, ancient yogic sciences and presenting them in a rigorous, formalized manner that the modern scientific and psychological communities can actually digest and accept. Chopra didn't just translate Sanskrit words into English words. He translated an ancient metaphysical paradigm into the modern language of endocrinology, neuroscience, and psychology.
So instead of just talking about balancing mystical energy centers or chakras, Chopra was talking about regulating the autonomic nervous system and modulating cortisol levels.
Exactly. Osman praises Chopra for taking ancient knowledge and giving it a practical, scientific application for the modern era.
It makes it so much more accessible.
It really does. When you translate prana into bioelectricity and autonomic regulation, or you prove that meditation shifts brainwaves from a stressed beta state into a calm alpha state, you demystify the practice. It becomes a reliable toolkit rather than a religious dogma.
And that translation is the exact key that unlocks this practice for the busy professional. It proves you don't need to know the Sanskrit name for a breathing technique to reap the very real biological benefits of a calmer nervous system.
Which leads to perhaps the most empowering aspect of Osman's entire philosophy.
Which is?
Well, think about it. If the old rules are mathematically impossible, and if becoming an academic master of ancient terminology is a waste of your limited time, who actually dictates your practice? Who writes the rules for your morning routine?
Osman's answer to that is what surprised me the most, honestly. You have this teacher with decades of deep, rigorous study. You would fully expect him to take the traditional guru stance, right? Like, I have climbed the mountain, I have endured the discipline, follow my exact path if you want to succeed.
Yeah, that's the standard narrative.
But instead, he explicitly tells his students, don't treat me as the end-all.
It is a radically humble stance. But mathematically, it is the only stance that makes sense for the modern era.
It really is.
He's telling people to extract whatever specific tools are beneficial from him, and then to go out and extract different tools from multiple other teachers. His ultimate directive to the listener is, you must create your own yoga program.
Become the architect of your own bespoke blueprint.
Yes.
Because no ancient text knows what your specific commute looks like or what kind of stress your specific job creates.
Exactly. Find a teacher you respect as a foundational starting point, just as Osman did early in his journey with a teacher who prioritized a safe scientific approach. Learn the basics of how to steer and brake. But after that, you have to synthesize the material.
You have to make it your own.
You have to curate it and tailor it to the exact specifications of your daily life, your unique biology, and your modern responsibilities.
And you can actually see this philosophy, this bridging of the ancient with the ultra-modern in real time on his website, yogawellness786.com. I mean, he isn't just posting translations of dusty old sutras.
Not at all. He actively updates it by contextualizing ancient meditation and breathing techniques with contemporary, trending lifestyle topics. He is pulling discussions directly from major media platforms in leading hyper-competitive cities like London and Dubai.
That makes perfect sense for his target audience. If you are a busy executive in Dubai dealing with intense market volatility, reading a standard lifestyle journal, you don't need to know how a breathing technique helped a monk in the 12th century.
No, you really don't.
You need to know how that specific technique can mitigate your modern burnout, alleviate your digital fatigue, and stop your mind from racing at 2 a.m.
He's taking the serenity of the mountaintop and custom fitting it for the boardroom.
I love that phrase, custom fitting it for the boardroom.
He is proving, through his own life and teachings, that a wellness practice only possesses real value if it is intimately relevant to the modern individual's daily reality. The most important thing is not how perfectly you practice, but simply that you establish a baseline and get started.
So let's synthesize all of this into the ultimate takeaway. For you listening to this right now, whether you are commuting in traffic, prepping for a massive presentation, or just trying to find 5 minutes of peace before the kids get home, the core message here is profound permission.
Yes, absolutely.
You
Permission.
have permission to drop the guilt. You do not need to wake up at 3 a.m. and grind through 4 hours of ancient protocols before the sun rises. When your life inevitably gets chaotic, embrace the sub-minimum.
Let your practice shrink.
Yeah, let it shrink to 30 minutes or 20 minutes or just small 5-minute pockets of breathing between meetings. And do it without an ounce of guilt. You're keeping the battery alive.
And as you build that flexible routine, remember to ruthlessly filter out the noise. You do not need to memorize the engineering manual of ancient terminology to drive the car.
Focus entirely on the tangible outcomes. Ask yourself, is this 20-minute fast charge making me more creative today? Is it bringing me back to a baseline state of calm? Am I making better decisions right now than I did yesterday?
Those are the right questions.
Take what works from the masters, discard the academic nuances that don't fit your 21st century reality, and step into the role of architect for your own custom wellness program.
And as we close this discussion, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. Just, a new lens through which to look at that rolled up yoga mat sitting in the corner of your room.
Ooh, what is it?
Well, if the ultimate original goal of all these ancient practices is simply to bring flexibility, calm, and better decision-making into your inherently chaotic life, could a rigid, guilt-inducing pursuit of perfect classical protocols actually be the single biggest obstacle to achieving the very peace they promise?